So have a snack. What's a good snack? A great snack is deviled hummus eggs. You make hard-boiled eggs, you throw away the egg yolk, and fill in the cavity with hummus, mashed chickpeas, and olive oil.
Mm-hmm.
And now for dinner, you might have salmon, and again, you have lots of grilled or steamed vegetables, throw in some olive oil, and that's your day in the zone. Oh, finally, you may buy, before you go to bed, a glass of wine and a piece of cheese. See, the French learned this a long time ago. Never drink alcohol without a protein chaser.
Mm-hmm. Are people hungry? People ask me all the time, but I'm going to be hungry on that diet, aren't I? What
No.
makes it not hungry? I'm going off the track here, but I just wanted to ask you that.
It's all about your hormones. There are two powerful, things called biological urges, which are, controlled by hormones. Here's one biological urge: breathing. You're saying, I'm a man of will. I'm not going to breathe for 25 minutes. Well, I don't care how much will you have. After about 2 minutes, you're gasping for breath. Hunger is the same thing. But hunger is balanced by another urge called satiety. That's lack of hunger. If those two are balanced, you're never hungry. If you're never hungry, cutting back in calories is real simple. But if you are making more of the hormones that cause hunger and less of those that cause satiety, you're going to always be hungry. And guess what? Your only defense against that is willpower. And that's not going to work. So it's simply as reestablishing the hormonal balance to control hunger and satiety.
Another question. Can you just, and I love this in your book, can you discuss your approach as to how you determine someone's protein needs? I think it makes so much sense, and I'm surprised that mainstream dietitians do not take into account an individual's lean body mass or muscle when determining protein needs, or for that matter, their activity level.
Well, this is the aspect that people try to make one solution for everyone. Simple thinking usually gives rise to simple slogans. The fact is, what you have to eat is enough protein to meet your protein requirements, which depends on your lean body mass, has nothing to do with your weight, and how active you are.
Lean body mass to the listening audience is muscle.
It's basically muscles.
Yeah.
And so in the book, I put together a very simple thing, requires only a tape measure that you can measure your lean body mass 15 times a day if you want to. It's not going to change that much. But it's saying, well, it's not high tech. Saying, it turns out basically the results are identical to a $40,000 piece of equipment. So once you know what your protein requirements are, say, okay, now I know how much protein. I just follow through it. It falls out, almost like an equation. But again, all you have to use for the average person is your hand and your eye. You can't go wrong with that.
Okay. Many people, actually, before I ask that, you say in your book, Enter the Zone, that consuming fat does not make you fat. Can you explain that? Because I'm sure this goes against the grain of what most people have been told. I don't know if you're familiar with an author named Douglas Christ.
Oh, yeah, I've got his book, yes.
I read something, Eat Fat to Lose Fat, back, I don't know when I read that, back in maybe the late 80s, early 90s, is that correct? And I was showing that to some of the people that I worked at in a gym, and they're like, read it first and then come back to me. But I just want to hear it from you.
Well, again, what makes you fat is basically hormones, in particular the hormone insulin. It's excess insulin that makes you fat and keeps you fat. And fat, dietary fat, has no impact on the hormone insulin. What does? Carbohydrates do. And the higher the density of the carbohydrate as found in grains and starches, the greater the impact on insulin.
Now you're talking a little bit about the glycemic load.
Load. And so
can you explain that a little bit to the listening audience?
Well, in nutrition, the early days, 30 years ago, were so simple. There are good carbohydrates like bread and potatoes, and
like the old food guide pyramid,
saying sugar, until they did the experiments. And it turns out that actually table sugar was entering the bloodstream as glucose slower than bread or potatoes. They say, what gives here? Because, it's the rate of glucose into the bloodstream that causes the body to secrete insulin. And that's the hormone that makes you fat and keeps you fat. And just think about this. How do we fatten cattle? We feed them lots and lots of low-fat grain. Why? It stimulates insulin, it makes them fat, and keeps them fat. So again, when people had the simple thinking, fat is the cause of fat, they said, let's take fat out of the diet and replace it with grains and carbohydrates and starches. And the process basically started an evolution of basically an epidemic of obesity that we're still dealing with today.
Many people confuse your diet with the Atkins diet, and the South Beach for that matter, pawning it off as just another low-carb diet. Can you tell the listening audience what the differences are between the Zone diet and Atkins and South Beach? And I think on one interview you said that the South Beach was, I guess the first part of it was Atkins, and the second part of it was the Zone.
Exactly. Well, it turns out that basically it's hard for the Zone to be considered a low-carbohydrate diet if you're actually eating more carbohydrates than protein.
40, 30, 30.
Yeah, I basically got my degree in science, but but
the
English
numbers
says,
are higher on the carb side.
Yeah, so the Atkins diet said carbohydrates, they're bad, they're evil, take them out of the diet. Now, what you do, here's a good rule
Throw
of
the
thumb.
baby out with the bathwater.
For any of your listeners, any diet that uses the word high or low to describe it is hormonally unsustainable. Now, the Atkins diet did say, yes, carbohydrates cause insulin. But, again, if you take them out of the diet to such a great degree, the body rebels because the brain did not fall off the turnip truck. If you're not going to have enough carbohydrates into the mouth for brain function, it knows where it can get more. It's going to send out the hormone cortisol, that's a stress hormone, to tear down muscle mass and convert it into glucose. And do this long enough, all of a sudden, you start developing what is called insulin resistance, and you regain all the weight. And
So that can cause insulin resistance.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And that's why all the studies on the Atkins diet say, yes, they initially lost weight, and they all gained it back. Now, were they all weak-willed ninnies? Now, if I'm eating porterhouse steaks for dinner and lunch, and basically, egg omelets all day for a breakfast, saying, I want to keep doing this for the rest of my life. But what they were seeing was basically the counter-hormonal response. Now, on the other hand, if you're eating too many carbohydrates, you're going to make too much insulin, and that'll make you fat. So between those two